Um, the brightest green flash of all the green flashes. What did Mike would mean
Mm.
when he said that?
Yeah, so it's a funny thing that there's this idea that when the sun sets on a completely clear sky, so there's no clouds and you're just seeing the sun, well, basically the earth rotating
Mhm.
such that the sun disappears, that there's people that swear that they've seen this flash of green light as the last uh, top of the sun disappears, as the earth rotates.
Wow.
Uh, and then there's other people who think it's a load of, malarkey,
Hooey.
but we had one particular evening with just a beautiful dark blue sky and the sun going, disappearing when it was like a long sustained shift of color from sort of that orangey hue of the sun to a very bright green light, where even the naysayers were like, "Oh wow, that was pretty cool! Like it actually happened." So I think we converted everybody that was on the boat and was on deck at that time to see that yes, there's some kind of effect. I'm sure there's a very logical scientific explanation for why it does that. The refraction of that light turns green, but it
Mm.
was a very cool thing. Honestly, I mean, to witness the sunsets and sunrises from the view that we had on the boat for a whole year is a pretty, that's a worthwhile investment in my mind, because it was just stunning so many times, no matter what the conditions might have been, weather, wind wise, to see that every morning, every night. And we almost always had our shifts such that we, every other day you had a sunrise and a sunset on your watch. So you actually get to
Mm.
experience both ends of the day. So yeah, that's certainly one of the highlights, the natural highlights that was inspiring for me. But I should refer back to that because we spent a lot of time talking about one third of what my reflection was about the race. Like, well, I guess we've talked a little bit about my pride in my own accomplishments, and then
Mm.
obviously the frustration with the performance. But the third part was definitely inspiration from nature and from the opportunity to be
Yes.
in nature, with nature, observing nature, uh, from a viewpoint that very few people get to have. And so that is another huge part of the takeaway, is just how inspiring it is to be so connected to nature and be reliant on nature to to achieve what we try to achieve. Is Yeah, I most of the inspiration I take away from the race is actually more focused around those things, that seeing the way that the wildlife behaves in nature, seeing the way the weather and the winds and change, seeing the areas that we sailed through where there was clearly a very healthy environment in the seas versus those areas where we saw that there wasn't much going on. Um, that is a big inspiration for me coming out of this.
Wow. I would say probably the last maybe three or even four conversations we've had have really been where you've been saying it's becoming clearer and clearer to you the miracle of nature and the intelligence which it sounds
Mhm.
like to me, or if I'm remembering correctly, you'd always sort of felt that, but this is just bringing it more and more and more into focus. In fact, I even remember you saying one time, I'd like to I'd like this to be a part of my post-race life somehow, like all these curiosities that I have about wildlife and nature and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I actually picked up a book. Don't know where it is, but and it's about the senses of different, like the way animals sense things in their own lives, right? And so um and it sort of goes through different animals and what senses they use to navigate, to sense danger, to mate, to do all these different things. And it's fascinating because I think, and the book kind of alludes to this at the start, is that we assume that animals sense their experience of life through their senses is the same as humans, but it's couldn't be farther from the truth.
Mm.
And so to know that, you actually start looking at the impact that we're having as humans on their habitat and their experience of their environment. Um, when you understand that you're actually impacting their way of living, of existing, of
Mm.
surviving, and I think of one of the examples in the book was like a certain kind of um, insect. I think that it's all based on sort of vibration. That when they sense vibration, it's the most important sense for them to sort of navigate and be able to move around. And when you understand that, and then you start building, civilization in areas that they exist, you're creating a whole different sensory experience for them.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not to say that that's like we can't do that, but we just need to be more aware that there's so much more complexity going on than we possibly could understand. And
Mm.
I just find that really interesting now. It's a curiosity that I've already started sort of reading and exploring what that means, and it just opens up to, you were alluding to it, but to this idea that we don't, as humans, need to rely on our conscious intellectual knowledge as the only source of wisdom that we have available. There's so much more out there happening. And if you don't believe it, you just need to go out into nature and shut your mind down for a little while and watch it, and you'll see it for yourself. And I think that's something that I certainly have taken away from the race.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would argue that it's maybe not even the most important sense, the intellectual part of us,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, it usually gets
It's
us into trouble.
yeah. I mean, it's right. It's valid. The job of our mind is to generate thoughts. Like, great. But only paying attention to those or always going with what they're suggesting is I have learned for my own self is just a narrowing and a cutting off of some really important stuff. So
Mhm.
how cool. What's the name of the book? Any idea? Do you remember?
Let if you give me a second, I'll go grab it.
Cool, cool, cool.
This was a savior on the boat, my little Kindle.
Oh, very cool.
Yes, it's called An Immense World.
An Immense World.
I love the title.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's basically a book about how animals sense things in life and in their lives, all kinds of different animals. And yeah, it was one of the, I think I talked about the boobies on the front of the, which are a bird, on the front of on the front of the boat, on the way to Panama, and just my curiosity on how they were spreading the word that there was a boat to catch a free ride on.
Yeah.
That was sort of one of the moments where I thought, oh yeah, that's fascinating. Like, wonder how that happens. Like, where's the email chain that went out on that one, right? And so yeah, so this is a beautifully written book. It's quite entertaining, and um, it's sort of opening a new area for me that I'd not spent a lot of time. I kind of like you said, certainly a belief that I've always had that at least last 10 or 15 years more so even that there was a lot more going on than my brain was aware of.
Yeah.
This has just furthered that. So I'm excited to see where that leads.
Me too. Me too. All right. Are you good for some questions? We got four
Sure.
questions and yeah, and then we'll wrap up. We'll leave you
Sounds
to
good.
yourself, not on the boat for the first time in a long time. Okay. Karen asks, this is so Karen had asked a question before, and this was the second question that she had asked then, but it felt good to keep it to now. Okay. How do you anticipate that your return to land is going to fare? Uh, at least the part where you're going to stay in one place.
Well, I don't have a place to stay in one place at this time. So first, I I actually think that my return to land life, such as it will be quite comfortable from the perspective that I haven't been in one place for a long time, for almost 2 or 3 years now,
That's
almost
right.
three years now. And so the question will be, how am I going to make the choices? How are Monique and I going to make choices of where we are, whether we're going to the same place, whether we're going to different places, how that's going to work, how we're going to spend time with family, how family can spend time with us, all of those chapters are yet to be written. But I think the idea of moving and following the inspiration that comes up from a good, quiet, mindful place, and seeing what we're inspired to do, and then pursuing that, I think that's something that I know myself and Monique has talked the same way about, continuing to be in that space and to be in that mindset. So I'm quite confident that I'll be comfortable with that. I am going to make some conscious choices about making sure that, spending time with family, spending time with my parents. Um, but I don't think that it's going to be a return to well, anything that a lot of other people would consider normal. We didn't have a very normal life in the last few years anyway. So
Mm,
not really returning to normal, but returning to something that will continue to be about exploring and about testing ourselves, being inspired to do new things. And I really I plan on making that the priority for the foreseeable future. And the only thing, I have to return to some kind of form of career, or adding value to the world and getting some value back from others. But I'm confident that what I'm naturally good at can do that, and the experience that I've had from this year will just add to that now. So we'll see where that leads.
wow, epic. Woo. Thank you for that question too, Karen. That I wasn't sure where you were going to go with it, Andrew, and it's just really fun to hear. So, all
Mm-hmm.
right. So, this question was asked just after you left Washington, D.C. by our friend Mel, and I'm bringing it now. So the question is, was there a different feeling as you got closer and closer to completing this dream that you've wanted to do since you were a kid?
Mm. That's a beautiful question. There was definitely a different feeling as it got closer to yesterday. um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and it was a bit of I think it was more a result that the questions and the conversations around me seemed to start shifting in the last, probably actually since leaving Panama. There was something actually when we came out of the Panama Canal, out of the very last lock, when the doors opened and the Atlantic Ocean, or the Caribbean, was in front of us, but we're in the Atlantic again.
Mm,
There was a sense that, oh wow, like this is almost over. And we still had, that was I don't know when that was, June. So we still
yeah.
had, a month and a half or so, or 2 months to go. But being in the Atlantic again meant we were on the last stretch, and the conversation started to focus a lot more on life after the race than they had been up until that point. And so
Mm,
I think it was hard not to sort of shift a little bit. But as you and I have talked about many times, it was, the questions about what comes next and what's after the race. I tried not to entertain that very much at all, whenever I could, because I didn't want to make assumptions or make decisions before the experience, and I'd really had a chance to have the experience and reflect on it, and have some time, some space and time away from it, to really see what it really truly means for me to have done this, and how that might affect what comes next. So I'm grateful for the people in my life who are giving me the time and space, for my daughters, for putting some structure into the next few weeks that gives me things to do. Um, and yeah, we'll see where it all leads. But yeah, for sure, like leaving Portsmouth, it was so much anticipation. excitement, the unknown of what was ahead. And then you sort of get into the routine of what it becomes in the middle of the race. And so there's sort of a normality of, we just got to kind of keep going through this experience for, days and weeks and months in the middle. And then there was something like I said, in the last couple of months that started to be about, what's on the other side of all of this, and what's it going to feel like to come back into Portsmouth, and
Mm.
what's the reception going to be like, and how are we going to fare in the race, and are we going to be able to survive each other for another 2 months, and all of that, right? So, but it's a beautiful question, because it really does. I think it's like, I don't know if you've had this, but when I used to, have summer holidays from my jobs, it might have been like a 2 week break, and I'd often go camping down on when I lived out in Vancouver. I would go camping in California, right on the coast.
Mm.
And I always remember the first few days was like the anticipation of getting there, the excitement, the trying to, shut my brain down from work and what I was leaving behind. But there was a lot of energy around starting this adventure of vacation. And then you had this beautiful sort of window in the middle of peace and serenity and just enjoying it. And then somehow your brain knew there was a departure day coming, and you started getting into the mode of what's to come, going back to
Hmm.
work, things I need to do, and when do I need to leave. And so it had a very familiar structure to it, as to what I recall about those vacations of, yeah, from the early part to the middle to the end, a
Yeah.
natural shift that goes on.
Well, so this is really interesting too. And Melanie, I want to say thank you because it feels like there's even another layer to this, which is, well, you've said repeatedly that time on the boat is really a funny thing.
Hmm.
Like we've talked about that a lot. And here's another way in which you're looking at time and the experience of that, right? Like as time is passing, how feelings and thoughts change. And then, so our friend Patricia has certainly helped me understand time in a very different way. And so here's why that's coming up for me. When you were little, 5, 6 years old, you had a copy of a book in your home, and it was a book about how Sir Robin Knox Johnson traveled around the world in a sailboat all by himself. And then he started this race. He
Hmm.
is the person who's the founder of this race, so that people who haven't ever sailed or who've had some relative experience of sailing could do it. And you brought that book on board with you. And you happen to have, can you tell us, because I'm sure you know where I'm going. Can you tell us about what happened with that book and Robin on the boat?
Yeah, well, the day we were departing Portsmouth, he was there to wish us all, a safe passage. And so I, grabbed the book out of our little bookshelf on the boat and asked him to sign it. Um, and the full circle story is he was there on the finish line. Um, and a funny story is they decided to do an auction. So he had still owns the boat that in 1967 he sailed around the world. He still
Mm.
owns it. It's an old wooden uh, boat that you can't imagine somebody sailing around the world in, but it's a tiny little thing. And but he still has it, and he took it out to be on the finish line as the boats came in. But they decided to auction off the experience of being on the boat with him as part of the UNICEF fundraiser. And sure enough, it was two guys from our boat who had done previous legs, um, Tim and Sean, who got together and made the winning bid. So they actually got to spend the afternoon, or the morning, I guess it would have been, with Robin on his original boat, firing off the cannon as the boats came in and crossed the finish line. So, and then I actually saw him at the prize giving a few hours later, and just went up and thanked him for, allowing me to experience something that he had inspired through writing his book and then creating the race. And so, yeah, I mean, talk about full circle.
Yeah,
In so many ways, we've talked about, the circle and the quote about coming back to where he started, not
yeah,
being the same as never having left. I can absolutely I've experienced all the truth in that in so many different ways. But certainly with respect to Robin, it's been amazing for him to be part of this, my personal experience of this
Yeah.
race, to have him on the very start, the inspiration to the start of the race to the end of the race, and to be a part of all of it is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really cool. All right, couple more questions. Carolyn asks, no, not Carolyn, actually Carol, different, not your sister, but a different Carol. Hi, Carol, in the Facebook group, asks, if someone had only one leg of the race they could do, which
Mm.
leg would you suggest and why?
Well, so that's a hard one to answer without knowing what people want to get out of the experience.
Mm,
And I say that because we had people sign up to do, let's say, well, leg one, which is a long leg. It's a very, 28-day, wow, it's 37 days total passage from Portsmouth all the way to the bottom of South America. So
mm,
you end up crossing the Atlantic Ocean. You end up going from the northern, whatever, about 55 degrees north, all the way to sort of 45 degrees south. It's a long way. You get fairly moderate weather the whole way. You get to cross the equator, which for a yachting person is a big deal. You get a lot of time at sea. So that's a great leg for people that want to experience what this race is all about in terms of ocean crossings and sailing and being at sea for a long time and learning to be comfortable on the boat. So that's a great leg.
hmm
The other thing that's positive about that leg is most of the crew are coming are learn on a learning curve similar to the one that you're going to be on.
mm,
Right. And so everybody's learning together and figuring things out together. Where if you join at the very end of the race, you're joining a large portion of the crew who are very now experienced ocean racers, sailors, and you may feel that your gap is pretty significant to where their abilities are at. So that's a
mm,
very different experience. But then there's also, people who've signed up for like leg three from Cape Town to the western part of Australia, goes through this, the Southern Ocean, which is renowned as one of the most challenging ocean crossings. Leg six from Asia across to Seattle,
yeah.
across the Pacific Ocean is renowned as one of the most difficult crossings. So those are for people who they may not have a lot of sailing experience, but what they're really looking for is something that's really challenging and will really test them and
Mm,
and have more intensity perhaps to it. And so there's people who signed up for those for those reasons, right? And so, and then some people signed up because there's particular country that they wanted to go to, or they wanted to sail to their home port. Like we had people from Seattle who signed up to sail leg six because they wanted to sail from Asia back home to Seattle and
mm,
come into back home by sailboat. There's people who wanted to go to parts of the world that they'd never been to, so they signed up for Australia to Vietnam, and then to China. So it really depends on what the personal experience that people want is. And if people are specifically interested in asking like what's it like for each leg, I like feel for to anybody listening to this, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to talk to you about what my experience was like and what you might think about. But it's a bunch of different experiences depending on which part of the race that you choose, and your comfort level with sailing and your comfort level with learning, to within a team that's either all in experience doing this, or more experience that the longer you wait to join the race.
wow. Wild. And here's something else too that I think is related for the folks thinking about doing a later leg, at least specific to the PSP, in this race. Joe Govier, who was one of the folks that I got to talk to on the PSP in Washington, D.C.,
Mm.
he was like, he repeatedly said the respect and the esteem that he felt coming in as a person who hadn't been a part of this the whole time. And just how great it was to know that like everything that he did was supported, and that he wasn't, he never felt treated like somebody who didn't know what they were doing or a noob or something like that, right? So
Hmm.
that's neat too. Like there could be different experiences of that. He was a little nervous about it coming in, and it sounded like it was great. So,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah. I think we've talked about this a lot. I think we learned as we went how to bring new people onto the team and have them feel comfortable. We got better and better at that for sure.
Yeah.
But there's no question that there's two things that play into joining the race late. First of all, you've had longer gap from when you've done your training to the time that you actually start racing on the boat. The longer you wait to join the race, the longer that gap is, and so you have to relearn things that you were taught in training.
Mm.
And then the reality is that we were running the boat like clockwork by the last few legs, and so you're joining a crew that's operating at a speed that is very much different than the training speeds were in terms of how we execute things. So it's a lot of factors that go into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very cool. Great question. Thank you, Carol. And this feels like a really great one to sort of as we're wrapping up our conversation. So Angel asks, what are your plans post
Hmm.
world sailing?
Yes, the big question. Um, Manik was snooping through the Facebook and saw that question and had a good chuckle because it's the question that I refused to answer for the last 11 months, um, much to her dismay. I honestly can say that I'm still not sure what the answer is, other than in the broad strokes, which I've already talked about a little bit. It's staying open to adventure. It's staying open to travel. It's staying open to going into spaces that I don't know if I'm capable of. And I think there's some things that were inspired in me in the race to learn more about. We've talked about learn more about nature, to learn more about the weather, to learn more about cooking, um,
Mm-hmm.
to learn more about languages, because cooking and languages are probably the two things that I was inspired by other people on the boat to see their abilities, to go into the galley and come up with a meal based on just a random selection of ingredients in a very under sized kitchen, and they could come up with an amazing meal. And I thought that was just the coolest thing. And so there's an inspiration there. And then definitely seeing people who could speak many different languages comfortably, and the comfort that brings other people when somebody can speak their language, and
Mm.
that's sort of how they introduce themselves to the conversation, that you can see how that connects people in a much different way. So that's another area that I have curiosity about.
Mm.
um, but being away from family, being away from partner, being away from my parents and my kids, also reminds me that that's really really important to me. It's something I want to really be able to do more of. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that all plays out, and then continuing to find ways, as I've said, to work, and it doesn't even. It's funny when I say the word work, it just doesn't even feel right. It's finding ways to contribute and make a difference and help people, and seeing where that leads. All of that will be part of it, but what that painting looks like, I think the canvas is still pretty bare right now.
Be
I have
open.
all the sort of I have the paints all coming together, and maybe there's a brush nearby, but I have no idea what it's going to look like.
Oh, I love that. I mean, like, what a cool moment for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of. I don't think it was an intentional reset. Like I've called it a sabbatical, but it wasn't like a midlife crisis to find myself again or anything like that. I was very content and happy living the life we were living, doing the kinds of work that I was doing. But it was just an experience and an opportunity and a timing that seemed to be delivered at a perfect time for me to have the chance to do this. And
Hmm.
now I can see that it has opened up some new excitement and inspiration for me. And that's ultimately the way I want to live my life, is to be open to what I'm inspired to do, and then to have the freedom to go and do it, whether
Hmm.
it's whether it's easy, whether it's something I know how to do, or whether it's something brand new. I think when those inspirations come up, that there's definitely some sense of paying attention to that and doing something about it.
Hmm. Um, you've been sharing, I think even since we got started, about the excitement of and looking forward to walking your daughter down the aisle, and more recently, you're going to take another daughter off to college, so there's going to be a little bit of a road trip. And I was thinking about that. I got to see a little bit of the live stream yesterday as y'all were coming in,
Mm,
and there were this was so beautiful. There's a woman who she's gone all the way around the world, and she does the Facebook lives. I can't, I don't know her name. I'm not sure if I've ever known her name. Do you happen to know her name, Andrew?
mm.
No. Okay.
No, no.
Yeah. Well, she was speaking about, so she is circumnavigated. So she's done the race and she's done it all the way around the world. And she talks about, she got really emotional talking about how when you wrap up, it's really good to have something to anchor yourself to, or something to sort of, she was recommending a vacation or some sort of, and I thought this is really neat. Like, you've built yourself in a great, well, I guess it was your daughters built in some really great things for you, some real touchstones, so that as you are coming back into the world and finding, you know, your level or whatever, like
Mm.
there's some things that you've really got to participate in, some things that are grounding for you. And I just thought that was really cool, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me, but when I did my first interview for the race, to see if I'd be a suitable candidate, at the end of the questions they asked me, the lady Della Parsons had done the race twice. She was doing the recruitment interviews, and when she was done all of her questions, she asked if I had any questions, and my question to her was, what's the one thing that you missed most after the race,
Mm.
as you return to normal life. And she said it was absolutely the simplicity of life on the boat, of the limited number of decisions that actually had to be made, because it was just, you did what needed to be done. It was fairly obvious what that was in every moment.
Mm.
And so I actually really appreciate the simplicity of what my life looks like, at least for the next month or two, in terms of course, I'm like thrilled to get home, see my parents, see my sister and her family. I'm thrilled to have the chance to walk Katrina down the aisle and say a few words about her and David, and
Mm.
their lives together. Um, I'm super excited to then hop in the car and have a week or so with Danielle, and get her settled back into university, and see who she is as a young woman now after a year of university, and going back. So, and then on the way back, I'm going to stop and see Renee, who's my oldest daughter, and her life, and she has a home, and she has chickens and eggs, and does
That's
has a very
awesome.
different life. um yeah, and so, like, all of that whole circumnavigation of my offspring will be, um to be honest, equally as thrilling in so many ways as to what I've just done, because I
Mm.
get to see them doing the things that are really important to them at this
Mhm.
stage in their lives, and to see who they've become, and to hear what's been up for the last year, and to answer any questions they have about what I've been up to, and to just be with them, fully, without feeling the pull of anything else going on in our lives. So,
Wow.
um, feels like it's been a while, probably, as a parent, that I've had the opportunity to be that present for them,
Wow.
uh, for those lengths of time, and for events and things in their lives that are that important. So, pretty special, actually. I'm pretty very grateful and fortunate, because there's no question that, going, like, we have people who had to leave today to go back to their homes because they have to go to work tomorrow. I was just like,
Wow.
whoa, how do you do that? Like,
Wow.
how do you step back into that life after whatever length of experience you've had on the boat? It's hard for it to be the same. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be very interesting.
Uh-huh. Very cool. Um, Thank you. Thank you for all of this.
You're welcome. Well, and likewise, thank you for all the work that you've done to make this possible. It's been such an important part of my experience to get to reflect on each race, answer the questions that you and others have, because it really has helped for me to sort of document in this way the experience that I've had. I didn't journal a lot. I didn't really take detailed notes about what was going on day to day. And so it's been really helpful to get the broad strokes of what has happened, because that's really the takeaway. Yes, there was days that we, had a big storm, or there was days where we, saw a sperm whale. There's days that, we messed up on the boat and ripped a sail or whatever. And those are kind of irrelevant after time passes, but it's the broad strokes of what I've taken away
Mm,
that you've really helped cement for me, and in answering the questions and thinking through uh, uh, you know how I have experienced this.
mm,
And I think we've talked about maybe doing one more, even with some space after the race, just to see how that has changed things. So it's been a really, really important part of my experience, so thank you for all you've done to make that possible.
mm. You're welcome. And yeah, I'm grateful, glad to be able to do it. It's been so much fun. I mean, woohoo.
It sure has. Yeah,
Yeah.
I should also say, I don't take for granted the fact that, there's a couple hundred people who decided on their own that they wanted to follow along the journey in the Facebook group. There's lots of people on LinkedIn who've been following along with the odd posts that I would do, when we got into port. And the amount of support and love and that, and actually financial support and inspirational support that I've gotten through those channels has been a big part of me staying, inspired to keep doing this and to see that it is making a difference for people. Um, I don't take that for granted. So thank you to anybody who's watching this, for who's played those roles, because it's really, really been a helpful thing to know that there's a little community out there who cares about me and about what I'm up to and about, what kind of experience I'm having, and is living in some way through that. Um, that's pretty special. So thank you to everybody out there who's been supportive of my year of craziness.
And I felt, I mean, obviously there's my own curiosities and enthusiasm, but to have that be joined by others, and the questions that are asked, and the just the excitement of what you're doing, what people share in the Facebook group sometimes, and ooh, it's just, yeah, this has been a very fun, very, very community feeling, you know.
It has, yeah. And Manik has played a huge role in keeping everybody up to date on how the race is going and what's going on, and any insider information she's getting about, what might have happened on the boat that other people, didn't know about. And so that's also been, just having, somebody to manage that and share that and to provide insights, and then to be here for the finish, meant a lot. And so, she's been a really important part of this whole year as well, of being a supportive partner, to let me fulfill a childhood dream, and then, to on her own go off and do a year of crazy adventure that she's done, and write a book and publish a book and the whole thing. It's been quite a year. We've been reflecting, that it's we have to be unbelievably grateful to have the opportunity in your life to stop and go about something that's really important to you personally, and to have the support around you to do that, and to come out of it and have a chance to then reflect on what comes next, and what that might look like,
Mm.
is something that we can't take for granted.
Yeah. I feel that. Um, I mean, and speaking personally, I've gotten to know Monique a little bit this year too, and that's, I mean, just what a wonderful person and being able to follow along on her journey. I don't know if you know this, Andrew, but I'm an honorary Giroux.
I did not know that.
Yes, because Monique went to she went to a place in France where her ancestors are from.
Correct.
In fact, her, I believe it was like her great 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 something something great grandfather is from she went to
Mhm.
his home before he
The physical
emigrated
house
to
is still there, 400
yeah.
years old or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and she said something at the time like this is going to be really interesting to you know my all my relatives and I was like it's really interesting to me and she said okay great you're an honorary Giroux.
Well, I don't know if the whole family knows that, but now they do. Yeah. So there you
Exactly.
go.
Yeah, I like it's been really interesting from this perspective because there's your journey that you're on and there's the support that you're receiving and there's her journey that she's on and the support that she's receiving. And it's just I mean, for two people to be so geographically not in the same location and still together, like still in partnership, and however that shows up, it's just, it's really, really inspiring. Really inspiring.
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about this, because you've this is part of your story as well. Is I think people often just don't have the conversations with their partners to ask and to be curious about how that might be possible. What
Mm,
what might it look like if we had, if we took a month, if we took a week, and each did our own thing. Like, what would you do for that week if you could have a week and you could do whatever you want, however you want, right? What would it
yep.
be? Right? Like, what a cool conversation to have with your partner without any assumptions of what kind of answer you're going to get, and how could I support you to have that week and
Yeah.
make it the most amazing week you've had, right? Like, that's that's what's possible for people. And we're both fortunate that we got to that place at a little bit different time, but we both got to that place to accept that that was possible. And
Hmm.
we needed to talk through it. We needed to set expectations and then to try to stay to those expectations. And it's not that it hasn't been without some bumps along the way, but the fundamental belief that this was an amazing opportunity for us personally, but also as a partnership to go through this and then come back out of it and see what that meant. I just don't think it's that big a stretch for anybody to do that with their partners, with their families. It's just a different way of thinking about what's possible and what it takes and what it means to be in a partnership or
Mm,
in a family. Uh, I think it can mean whatever you want to make it mean. People just need to sit down and have open conversations with each other about what's possible.
yeah. Yeah.
And it is possible to sail around the world, whether you're an experienced sailor or an inexperienced sailor. You just need to have people around you who say, hell yeah, like, go give it a try and see like, see what's possible.
Yeah.
And we'll be there at the finish line for you.
Yeah.
Like, that that's what this is really about, is, you know, whatever the sailing around the world is for somebody else, it's, finding ways to sit with the people that are the most meaningful people in your life, and find ways to be able for them to be able to support you doing this, and then for you being willing to give them the same kind of support back to
Yeah.
what they want to do. And yeah, if people take some inspiration to do more of that in their lives, I think that would be a great takeaway from this whole experience that we've had as a
Hmm.
partnership, uh, because it has made a huge difference to both of us.
Amazing. All right. Well, where in the world will we be speaking to you next?
I have no idea. uh, which is yeah, which there's a new answer, right?
Yeah.
So I guess yeah, I have no idea. I don't know if I'm going to be anywhere for more than a couple of weeks at a time for the next little while, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. We have limited belongings that need to be taken with us anywhere. So, and we may be, Monique and I may be going one way, and each other may be going the other way at times, and going together at other times. So we don't really know. But it'll be somewhere in Canada for the next couple of months, I suspect, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And
Mm-hmm.
then beyond that, as the weather starts to get cold, I'm hoping maybe there'll be somewhere warm for a while,
Woohoo.
uh, to continue to find the answer to the big question of what comes next. And
Yeah.
so time will tell.
Amazing. Cool. Yeah, and our thinking, well, what I had proposed and what sounded okay was maybe sometime in September. Maybe we talk again after you've had 6 weeks or so to kind of integrate and return.
Yep,
And then we'll find you and we'll ask that question one more time. Where in the world is Andrew Moss?
sounds wonderful. I look
Cool.
forward to it.
Yeah, yeah, me too. All right. Well, safe travels until then, and lots of love to you. Lots of love to Manek. What fun.
Thanks, Kay. Same right back to you. And thanks for everything you've done. It's been a really important part of my life. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Talk soon.
You bet.
Thank you for listening. Where in the World is Andrew Moss is produced by me, Kay Locke Culp. If, like me, you're inspired by Andrew's journey, you can follow along in his Facebook group, Climb Aboard Andrew's Adventure. The link is in the show notes. Also, this is the longest time that Andrew has been away from his family and his work. He truly has no idea what lies on the other side of this adventure. You can contribute to Andrew's adventure costs and help soften the blow of a year away from his beloved coaching practice by donating to his GoFundMe at the link in the show notes. And Andrew asks that you consider making a donation to his boat's UNICEF fundraiser, also at the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening and for supporting Andrew if you can. Join us next time when once again we answer the question, where in the world is Andrew Moss?